Hello, I'm Alan James Burns, an artist, curator, and festival maker, exploring the intersection of disability and the climate emergency. What follows is an interview with Emma Blake-Morsi, conducted over email and voice note, as part of my social media takeover with Disability Arts Online. Through the interview, we discuss disability, climate change, and Emma's artistic practice. How does your personal experience of disability inform and influence your artistic exploration of climate change?
Across the decade I've spent in the creative industry, I've been able to really refine my craft to now be at a position where I'm an award-winning multidisciplinary producer, but also work as a production partnerships manager and the non-executive director of Vice Arts Agency and former City Council's culture board member. But I really believe that first and foremost, I'm a prolific visual storyteller, and the kind of diverse mediums I work in, from film, photography, writing, um, illustration design, kind of sound and immersive experiences, have been integral even in some of the training I've been doing as a creative intersectional environmentalist, following a lot of the years in STEM. And a lot of the research I've done has really spread from kind of sustainable circular systems where I've been repurposing waste substances to kind of really understand what it means to kind of develop hybrid tools, experimental hybrid tools that kind of foster and create inclusive nature inspired experiences. But I also love producing these kind of larger, internationally environmentally conscious Ad Green and Albert film productions, and where my work kind of spans projects across Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Africa, North America, and South America, um, working with large corporations as well as more grassroots kind of organizers. A lot of the work that I do ultimately still challenges approaches to inclusion and innovation, where for me it's about kind of creating experiences that um, creating work and projects that ultimately can be experienced by all, but for me, it has to have the visibility and engagement with marginalized groups also. Because ultimately, for me, to meet global climate resilience, we need everyone. And when we exclude voices, we're excluding innovation, we're excluding opportunities. My personal experience with disability informs and influences my artistic exploration of climate change in so many ways. I think it's something that is constantly evolving at the different stages in my life and career. I definitely grew up as an advocate for disability from a position where I was caring for my mum, who was chronically ill since I was being like 15, acknowledging the various kind of notions of kind of her own physical and mental health kind of complications, whilst also supporting my family and two other brothers who are autistic. But then actually later on in life, going on my own journey to kind of contextualize my experiences through understanding that I had borderline personality disorder elements from a very young age, then realizing actually I am neurodiverse, and not only that I have ADHD, but also that I'm autistic. And I think kind of seeing myself in this journey and the balance of that as an intersection environmentalist, many facets of my own identity has been linked so directly, from being raised within relative poverty, which kind of naturally helps you form more conscious consumerism habits. Um, but also deeply trying to understand for my own self what healing looks like, and seeing nature as being such a key factor for um, a big chunk of how I've been dealing with stuff and processing and coping mechanisms across my life, but then realizing just how much nature is a Western tool for me personally, seeing its impacts in a personal and professional way, but also understanding that actually that belief that through developing those first-hand experiences with people, that they can in time hopefully grow to develop a desire to protect it. And so this is an integral part of how I love to incorporate some of the work that I do with communities, but also when I think about the sector and providing more for how we can really shift systems, I've been developing access as a creative tool. So this AAACT has been incredibly necessary for developing an inclusive design framework that reimagines what's possible with radical inclusivity, where you're able to have better design principles that centers access and representation, inclusivity from a point of a creative exploration, as opposed to being a challenge. And it's a way of understanding actually if we were able to have better decision making around how we incorporate this into concepts, into products, what would we then be producing? And so, although I've been always really engaged in developing work around social justice, this then kind of evolved my understanding of the implications of climate justice and how all of this is all interlinked.
In your opinion, why do you think artistic expression can effectively convey the complexities of disability and the climate emergency?
I truly believe that artistic expression can absolutely convey complexities in disabilities and climate change because it's able to illustrate really complex themes in more accessible ways whilst also finding ways to engage. For COP26, I was the billboard artist for the University of Bristol's Cabot Institute for the Environment. That was all around looking at how can we convey these really complex scientific research in ways that are accessible for the public, but equally in a way that can be digestible for those who are moving through roads in cars or cycling past or walking past, and trying to find ways that you can use the arts kind of really engage creatively. And I think this is an area that particularly excites me for the role of the creative industries and storytelling within climate action. I do really truly believe that the arts is integral for being able to allow us to reimagine, to provide new ways of being and experimentation. I think we have more liberties with being experimental in our sector, and I think actually there's a lot of power in understanding what it means to kind of start to creatively embody new systems and new ways of practice and being. Um, and I love this quote from Tony Cade Bambara, which is the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And that for me is kind of the way I approach my work and the way I really hope to have impact.
I'm wondering, how might art foster inclusivity and resilience for disabled communities amidst the environmental impacts of climate change?
I feel like art is able to foster inclusivity and resilience for disabled communities amidst the environmental impacts of climate change because of its way of allowing us to also self express. I think oftentimes when you're a marginalised group, you are often put in a box and people make a lot of assumptions about your experiences and also what you have to say. And I think the ability to creatively express yourself allows so much nuance in directing how that narrative goes, but equally being able to kind of center your own voices in ways that, in the mass industries, you're not able to oftentimes see represented. And actually, by kind of regaining that power and autonomy in what you can express, I think it allows you to really kind of start to reframe the discourse we can have, but also the ability to also heal in community. I think oftentimes art allows us to find kinship in so many different ways, in the way it connects hearts and minds, but also the ability to kind of make the personal universal and the universal more personal. And I really hope that actually in this way we're able to reimagine new possibilities within our own communities, and giving ourselves the leverages to kind of co-create and co-produce. I think oftentimes a lot of sectors have a lot to learn about how to really embody more holistic processes. And whilst I don't think the arts or creative and culture sector by any means is perfect at this, I do think there's a degree of self-expression that we allow within our sector that other sectors are quite stifled from. And I would hope that in many ways this can actually provide us so much healing in so many other facets of society where we need to be able to embody a variety of solutions in that way.
Have you ever experienced any eco ableism, specifically in an arts context?
I think the arts sector and even arts related climate projects is rife with eco ableism, oftentimes because of the reality that we are working within systems and within a sector that is so absolutely run on emotional labour and resources that are forever being cut and stifled and limited. And in the process of having to do quick turnaround jobs, we are regularly kind of working within extractive means. By nature, a lot of the kind of traditional processes have been built in a way that is very elitist. And when you think about how society has always been built in many ways in the Western world, actually, there's a lot of extractive practices and briefs which don't really value the human or really value the kind of lived experience or the lived elements that we bring to this space, and actually to be able to embody more inclusive but less ableist ways of being. We need to understand like what does a radical approach look like, and I love this. A lot of the stuff that's come out of the resource and racial justice program, because then it established this kind of commitment to have paid reparative rest days for emotionally informed work. So I'm the non-exec director for Rising Arts Agency. We're a Bristol-based agency which specialises in having a community of creatives who use their talents for social and racial and justice. And actually what's so special is that we've been offering paid paternity rest days now within our work for our community. And so being part of the resource and racial justice program through Rising, and kind of seeing how we've managed to embed it within our actual operations, but equally seeing how it's influenced the other kind of creatives we work with, has been so exciting, because it's also, you know, seeing that longevity in terms of being able to start to kind of put into place new systems and more holistic practices that kind of reflect the things we see more of, particularly as someone who you know, applies for budgets and has to apply for grants for stuff and kind of draft their own budgets. This is something I'm trying to embed more within the work that I do, and also when, especially when I'm working with other creators, particularly on projects where we have a lot of emotionally informed work that we're developing together. But I think, yeah, having this kind of industry where you have a lot of heightened or stringent loopholes that require so much of people, but without really uh, reimbursing that in the same value back. I think there's a whole realm of eco-ableism that is rife, and I would love to see the sector take more conscious approaches to address this directly.
Looking ahead, how might the role of art support a fair and just transition?
I think when we look to the future, I think the way that art can support a just transition is really about understanding what looks to foster the holistic ways of being and value systems that we want to really embody across our society. I think by being able to be experimental, I think it allows us to really start to understand the kind of shifts we would need in our existing frameworks and our existing establishments, but I also think it allows us to kind of provide these experimental systems of change, which ultimately can bolster new innovative solutions that don't always require us to look into newness, for instance, but actually can be an opportunity to reflect on actually what things have we been kind of steered away from, and actually as a society what can we start to move back towards. And I think when we talk about innovation, I think it's about recognizing that innovation doesn't always have to be something that we seek is you know, never been seen before. I think it's about looking at some of the things that have been successful before and actually trying to embed a lot more nature informed wisdom, a lot more indigenous wisdom into the kind of the work that we do. And I'm really excited by how art as a space is really kind of pushing the boundaries of what we're seeing as possible. And I think that the more we are able to really try to inherently um, find resources and tools to kind of replicate this in other sectors, in other key change making spaces, I can only hope that this will be a real significant influence that can continue. Because I think we're at a point where things are so incredibly bad that actually we have nothing to lose. And whilst I say that with awareness that a lot of people still have so much to lose within this space, oftentimes the people who are losing are going to be the ones who are the most marginalised. it still excites me knowing that like actually there's so much that can be gained. And I think by looking into other ways as being as opportunity, I think we need to kind of really reframe how we see kind of going towards just transition as not a scarcity, but a real pivotal moment to re-embed all the things that we actually could need and benefit from as a society and as people. But equally, you think about the world that we live within, and the other inhabitants on our earth also.
And finally, what is next for your own artistic practice?
So I guess in terms of what's next, my artistic practice is I'm really excited about evolving a lot of the research and development I've been doing in various ways, but particularly with access as a creative tool, because I really am passionate about finding tangible tools and resources to shift the ways we work in the creative sector and beyond. And I'm really hopeful about what that can mean, like, especially when a lot of the work that I'm doing has been co-developed with the kind of key target audience of which it'll be used by, being able to work together to be able to address the needs that we have as an industry, and yet also co-create with the marginalized community who are also incredibly invested in kind of seeing better and more advanced community engagement that is meaningful, that is progressive. And so ultimately, I'm excited by connecting in more meaningful ways in spaces that expands resources and opportunities available for marginalized people to connect with nature, and be invested stakeholders across decision making and more. And I really would love to see how, as a sector, this can kind of shift the processes that we have, the ways we procure resources and materials, but also in kind of creative decision making that we have and do. And once you know that 80% of our emissions is decided at the creative development stage, then that for me is such an integral space to start to address how we make decisions. So yes, lots of exciting things to come.